use the keystrokes from OS2 on every operating system, and sometimes they work.
Like
Sometimes they
shift,
don't.
like control, insert.
Well, they were the
Yeah.
Sometimes those work in other places.
yeah, well, they were the
On
CUDA.
Windows and Linux pretty consistently. So.
Yeah, some Windows programs don't.
Yeah, some don't.
They were KUA, so I mean that was picked up by a lot of
Yeah.
Yeah,
folks. So.
Now it's like, uncommon user access.
Yeah.
Everything is different.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's go ahead and get started. For those who don't know, my name's Andy Willis. I am the vice president of the Warpstock, and have been since, what was it, 2006?
Yeah.
And my first Warpstock was 2002 in Austin, and then the next one was in Denver in 2004. Been a lot of folks, I've known through here, and it's interesting to be able to come to the Warpstock and see other folks that have the same interest in the operating system. So it's worthwhile if it's something that you enjoy with the OS2. It's worthwhile coming here. Hint, hint for anybody that's watches this. So. All right, so there's been some interest, and I am not an expert in this. There was some interest in it, so I started looking into it, and I've got some, dug into it some, but not as much as I would have liked to. But the rEFInd, there was some interest in it largely because the AN launcher, while it does exactly what it's supposed to do, is not feature-rich at all. I mean, it wasn't designed to be feature-rich. It was designed to do exactly what it does. It can select other operating systems that are already on the system, and allows you to boot to those or into ArcaOS. I mean, that's exactly what it's meant to do. And for the most part, I mean, from my usage of it, I have nothing else that I need to do with it. Now, there's some things that other people want to do. One thing that is disadvantageous that others have mentioned, and that I do also get bit by a little bit, is the postage size stamp of a thing where it's hard to read. But as long as I know where it's at, it's not even that big of a deal. But it is, it makes it hard to read. That's, one of the biggest complaints. Dimitri was wanting it to automatically select last used. Well, it's not something it's designed to do. It's not something for it, in that. rEFInd, however, is a relatively simple way of getting to do those more advanced features. I looked at it once back, I don't know, a few years ago when we were first starting to look into getting set up for EFI. I had no particular use for it at the time, so I didn't go too deep into it. But the problem then is I also didn't have enough understanding of how the ESP worked to understand what this was doing. So I looked at it and says, well, what am I gonna, how do I build that on OS2? How do, how do I get that on there in OS2? So I didn't understand exactly what the thing was doing at the time. This here is the URL that, I mean, it has basically everything to do, everything you can get to from there. That's what you can get. You can download it from there. It tells you, it's got really good documentation there. It's got excellent documentation. And it's, now sometimes I have gone to a search engine to find it in there because there's so much that I allow some other search engine to find it in there for me, but it's there. It's just there is so much there that it gets a little difficult to find it.
Is it a good way to educate yourself about EFI?
Yeah, in general.
Yeah, I would say so.
Yeah.
Yeah, Rod does some very good writing. Good
Yeah.
explanations.
It's just that there's a lot.
Yeah.
So.
Tremendous amount of information.
Which is indicative of how complex
Yeah,
You
it's
are
a,
biased.
yeah, that's a bit of history, just in the sense that it was forked from the discontinued refit. And I'm saying rEFInd, and I say refit because that's what I see and that's what I read. Whether that's what they really want them to say, I don't know. I just read it the way I see it. And there are a few other forks from the refit that they're basically Mac centered, aimed at Macs for either older Macs or
Especially Intel, right?
Intel, and just I didn't look too deeply into that because I don't have any Macs that. But if you've got a Mac and you're trying to use it, I mean, there are some other ones that and I pulled that information from Rod again. I mean, that was he points to those other ones for not necessarily saying they're better, just that he points to them saying that's their focus. So. All right. With the rEFInd, it's all about that conf file. That's everything. And honestly, I say that you can leave the defaults, and it will largely just work. It doesn't give you some of the niceties necessarily, but it'll largely just work. It'll find everything and show it to you, and just come up. But the rEFInd, there's a sample file in there that, I mean, almost I can't say it's got everything because I don't know that, but I couldn't tell you anything that's missing from it that that you can go and it gives a good write up in that for what each of them does. Now. Still, I say it's got a good write-up, and it does, but you still may need to go over to his site to really understand why you would, do those things. But it's got but even so, it's got a good write-up enough for you to say, is this what I'm after, and go check on it. That's also, let's see. Oh yeah, so one of the things that was brought up was before I started, while I was looking at this, was to be able to boot a non UEFI, a BIOS mode, and it's got the options in there, but it doesn't actually specifically in that case though say that that's where you would put it. You got to go over to his site, so that's one place that it doesn't actually say, hey, add this. And I might just overlooked it at the time, but it was not, as clear to me at the time.
It doesn't on all machines, at least not on.
Well, it's not, okay, I'll get into that, but it's not guaranteed to work. Because, here's the entries I had in that I added to the conf file for the ArcaOS. And the first one I put in there was just to go straight to the loader, just like AN launcher put in there. In fact, I pulled the information directly from the AN launcher to get there. The second one is I added the AN launcher because you can chain boot, these things. I can go into the AN launcher, and from AN launcher I got to go into rEFInd, and from rEFInd and go back into AN launcher. It's it doesn't care, it just goes back and forth. And then the final menu entry is actually if you didn't have the AN launcher and it was the only one in there, that's the one that comes up, and it would show, hey, do you want to go to it comes up and shows which drive are you wanting to boot this off of, just without, if you had no launcher at all, AN launcher, if it was the only one on a UEFI system.
Oh, the icons.
Yes. Okay. Yeah.
I don't know if you.
Yeah, that's fine now. The icon. So it's got the ability to put icons, and I'll talk a little more about that. But the icons, you can then, if you're setting up without putting any of this entry in there, it'll actually boot the OS2. It'll find them and it'll let you boot to them. ArcaOS, I should say, because OS2 is not going to do this unless it happens to be able to install it and then put it under a legacy thing. But it'll find ArcaOS, but it just has like a generic whatever icon. If you add menu entries, and I've added menu entries for I'll be showing you that later, but I've set icons up so that I can see visually which one is which. All right, so here there's two basic ways for the BIOS mode. Like you said, it's not guaranteed to work though, because it falls back entirely onto the BIOS. It does, so this does not, by itself, rEFInd cannot boot a BIOS mode anything. But if you tell it to scan for and add the legacy at the end, now it's by default that one is commented out because it just does the default stuff. So if you undefault it, you got to tell it everything you want it to check. And I don't remember exactly. I think I removed internal from mine because if you go and set all of your stuff up and then also have it scanning for internal, it'll show up multiple times. So I had removed internal. But then if you put a USB drive in there, external it can find it, optical drives it can look for those. The manual being where I put those entries in there. And then if you add legacy, it'll go and search for, it searches the MBR and boot sectors for any options. Now, like I said, it goes and finds them and then tries to pass that off to the BIOS. It now becomes entirely up to the BIOS whether it's going to work right or not. So there's no guarantee because they can't do anything more. You can't really do anything more than that than just pass it off. The other option, instead of having it scan for the legacy, is you can go create a entry that is basically it's a bogus entry, but all it does is says gives it where you can put a name so it shows up in your list, and then you can have the option of putting a icon for it this way, and literally what I've got there says loader path to blah blah blah. I think you can put anything in there. It's as it says, it's a placeholder. Now whether or not I didn't check into seeing whether or not literally had to be placeholder for it to do this, but I don't think so because the other piece of it is hint legacy. That's what tells rEFInd to say, hey, this is not an actual EFI. This is a thing to say, hey, go pass this off to the BIOS. And that's why I think you can literally put anything under the loader because it's the hint that's doing it. And because there is no actual placeholder line there, being used.
Which disk to boot from then?
It goes, in this case, that's a really good question. Oh, disk 0.
Well, but that's just a title.
You're right.
I mean, it's still got to be the active partition, right? In BIOS mode?
I don't know. Honestly, now this is something I didn't think about. You're right. I don't know how it knows which one because there's nothing there that tells me which.
And I know I did it on some machine and I can't remember how.
That's I'll see if I can find something on that. I'll add it to the slides that we put up. But I don't have any way of testing it. Yeah. So I didn't run into it.
Yeah, you need a desktop machine with multiple disks to find out. But
so,
and
something's.
This is working as there's only one disk in the system, so it's going to boot from it.
Yeah, and that may be what that may be what that specifically is doing.
Isn't it it's going to detect the first disk in the system, and it's got to have an MBR on it. And that's what it's doing.
Gotta have an MBR, right?
Yeah.
It's got to be set to the active
the
partition.
BIOS boot order is going to determine where the first disk is.
But
Right.
it's a UEFI machine. This is the BIOS boot order. So
That's
So
I'm going to bet it's going to look for the only disk that's got an MBR.
Or the
Okay.
first disk.
First, sorry, you're
First
right.
disk.
It's gonna look through the disks and find the first disk
First.
that's got an MBR.
That's probably
Boot
right.
that.
Yeah,
And how it orders them?
Yeah,
Yeah.
roll the dice. you know?
yeah. That's almost certainly
I'm
got to
sure
be
he
it.
has a way.
Oh, yeah, I know.
Yeah.
Right.
So.
But,
Yeah, so that is most likely that what it's going to do. I didn't things that he couldn't test. I didn't even take that into account
Yeah.
because this has got 2 drives on it, but they're both GPT, so I can't.
Oh.
Yeah,
The problem is as you said, it's dependent on the BIOS.
Yeah.
Because it not only has to find which disk has the MBR, but then it has to set the machine, however you do that, so that it boots in the legacy mode to read
Yeah.
that. So it's actually a two-thing process.
well that's where you're going to have your BIOS set up correctly. So when you go into the BIOS, you'll have to have a CSM, because
Yes.
it won't be, it has to be enabled, and there's an option in most, if any of them that has the ability to do this anyway at all. It has to have the legacy turned on.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you have to say boot. You have to say boot. Allow both of them. If you have it just set to UEFI, it's not going to do it. Now I don't.
Is that true? That's right.
Well, it's possible that it would work otherwise, but I don't know that it would, because it's going to have to go to the BIOS, and if the BIOS doesn't know that it can boot off of
Yeah.
a legacy, I think it'll have to be allowed. I think. Now,
Yeah.
some of this stuff is voodoo because they just do whatever they want to do, but
He's got
in
no
the-
control over the BIOS programming.
yeah, but but in the BIOS, you got to, in most BIOSes, in order for it to boot off the legacy,
Yeah.
you have to have that turned on. So it pretty much, unless they're breaking their own things, the BIOS will have to be set to allow the legacy. Let's see, I'm trying to think of how terms I've heard it called. There's legacy. There's BIOS. They don't call it BIOS boot in there, but it's like a lot of them refer to it as legacy.
Yeah,
CSM, and the CSM would have to be enabled, but again, they don't usually. Some of them may do that, but the ones I've seen didn't say CSM. You had to enable the CSM, but for the boot, it had a different name.
Yeah.
Anyway, I don't. It's got different. You got to go and enable all of the BIOS options to be able to get it to work that you need. All right, this is what Dimitri had asked about, is the use last booted. And basically there's a timeout line that, if I remember correctly, by default was not commented out, but you'd have to make sure it's not commented out if it is. And you can set your desired time. So you can say 5 seconds, 10 seconds, so it's time. It'll be
Always remembers the last choice.
it by
Or there's
default. By default, it's going to. You can actually change that, but to go to a specific one. Yes. By default, it's going to go to the last one. And I can't remember if I uncommented that or if it was if it was originally uncommented. I don't recall. But either way, you go find it, because you're going to probably want to put your time in it. If you put a -1, it'll just, as soon as it comes up, if you're not hitting a key, it's going to boot the last one. And then there is another setting that is involved, but doesn't matter how it's set, whether or not it'll work. It just changes how it works. It'll either, well, I shouldn't say it won't make a difference. If something's wrong with your NVRAM, in any way, by default, if I remember correctly, it's set to look at the NVRAM and store the last, or I think it calls it previous boot, in the NVRAM. You can change that, however, so that it, and I think I did, as I recall, so it'll save it to the UEFI partition instead.
That's an interesting option, actually, because this way you can tell it to make a next boot from a particular partition, actually. I mean, for example, if I'm on OS2 and I guess I can tell it to boot into Windows, for instance, next time and just reboot it. I mean, if it can read it from the EFI partition, it should work. I mean, I will just change this file where it stores the next.
Yes, and I don't know how it stores it. I hadn't looked
Yeah.
into that, so I don't know if it's a text file, if it's a binary, but
Yeah,
it doesn't matter if
not
it's
in
there,
the
you can change it.
RAM, you can change it
Yeah.
on the partition, and it will just read it the
Yeah.
next time. It will
You'd have to know what to put in there, but yeah, you could just go in there and figure out what it is, and then you could change it.
Yeah, you could write the default boot to our rEFInd configuration file. That's accessible from
Right, and
ArcaOS
you
always.
you can just change the default for basically for your next reboot.
Other platforms have nice ways to edit the NVRAM. We don't really have a direct way to do that, as far as I've found.
Yeah.
But if you have it on, what he's saying is if you're putting it to the UEFI drive,
Yeah.
even if it's no matter what form it's in, it's accessible by
Yeah.
us, so we could go edit that.
Yeah.
So you could say previous boot, and then we just we lie to it what the previous boot was.
Right.
Right, yes, I mean-
Other platforms could edit that previous boot.
Yeah. Yeah, they could probably edit that in the NVRAM. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
but
Look up how they do it and probably port that too.
Well, that brings up, for me, an interesting question. The program boot order
Yeah.
that changes the boot order, is that changing it in NVRAM, or is it simply changing it in the ESP?
it's an NVRAM. That's an NVRAM.
That's an NVRAM.
Yeah. So.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, because I became intimately aware of this when I was trying to. I had Endeavor on here, and decided, I don't really care for Endeavor right now. It's not something I'm wanting to mess with right now. I'm going to go move it over to OpenSUSE. It's what I'm using at work, so I'm going to switch that over. And I did, and didn't take into account and didn't really think about it doing so. It went in and went in and messed with my NVRAM settings. And so now the only thing I'm booting to is OpenSUSE. Oh, okay, fine, whatever. So I go and try to point the thing, get the thing, pointing back over to the rEFInd, which wasn't all that difficult. But at first I said, well, I'm just going to move I thought it was using the Grub X64. I'll just fix that over. Not a big deal. And it's still not working. I'm like, So finally I get in, I start using EFI Boot Manager within the Linux, and I get it switched over. Okay, fine. And I boot up, and I select to go back into the SUSE, and then I reboot, and it just automatically boots into SUSE again, because it decided it was just going to rewrite the NVRAM settings for me again. I had to go find. I went through that scenario a few times before I finally found where that setting to tell it not to do that was. So yeah, it's and you can go in. So every time it did that, I was going in and changing the boot order, and I had to go do that through the EFI Boot Manager on the Linux side. ESP util couldn't do it to putting it to the AN launcher, but I'm not aware that it has any command line settings to change.
I was referring to bootloader, the OS2 program that's included in AOS.
That's going to use ESP util, and it will change it, but it only, as far as I'm aware, it only will put the AN launcher
Yes.
as
specific AM launcher.
Yeah.
it will set it as the primary.
So it's rewriting NVRAM or changing the...
NVRAM.
Okay.
It's changing NVRAM.
Okay.
It's changing the variables. NVRAM variables is what it's changing. All right, so at this point, there's not much more for me to talk about, without getting into seeing some of it. So this will be interesting for seeing if whether or not when I boot to the OS2 one, whether you can see anything up there or not. But it's not at that point. I don't suppose it's that critical. So, all right. Oh, that's going to be. It was going to be a problem. All right, I got to make a middle note. I got to, as I boot up, I got to change the settings here on the BIOS. Yeah, I meant to do that last night and I didn't get that done. So
Oh, it's not gonna boot.
it's not going to show up here.
Right.
So.
That's a nice screen, that thing. We could have like movie night.
It was cheap too.
Yeah, I remember $60 or something.
Something like that, yeah.
Not made in the USA.
Not made in USA, sadly, but,
Now with tariffs, $300.
Oh, yeah, the production of these has blossomed since the tariffs in the US. So you're fixing something about the display, where the display output goes in the BIOS?
Yes, by default, the laptop says, where do you want the display, like during boot up, to show up? So I had to go into here to set that. I'm going to try actually changing that. No, I can't change that. That's why I had changed. This is why I had changed it earlier to discrete graphics, but then OS2, the ArcaOS, when it booted up, left the ArcaOS screen. It actually booted all the way up, and I've had it on here before and it worked, but this is a new installation. It booted all the way up, but still showed the ArcaOS screen, and so I thought it was doing the hang thing, but no, if you did Control Delete R Y, it rebooted. So I was like, oh, okay, I know what it's doing. So. What I find interesting is the hybrid graphics. Actually, I got to switch it to the other one to see it. Nope, that's the wrong setting. Okay.
But you need to go to the HDMI out.
No, yeah, but this is what I find interesting. Allocate total memory there with the. If you select 512, it will reduce the memory in a 32-bit operating system. So, okay, yeah, I want 256. Yeah, it's still reduced. All right, so. Oh, I missed it. Oh. All right, so I've got different pictures, different icons to let me know what, visually see which one, what's what. And it's highlighted the OpenSUSE because that's the last one I was booted on. So it'll highlight there whichever last one was. I found that picture on the ArcaOS install, and it's just a small, perfectly sized icon for it. So I, put that out there.
Where'd you find it?
I can't remember exactly where I found it.
It's one of the PNG icons.
It's just it's somewhere on my boot drive.
Okay.
My kid made that one.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, I hadn't seen it anywhere else, but when I was searching for something to put on there, it was like I came across that. And I'm like, oh, that would
Can't
be
miss
perfect.
that.
So,
Shows real talent.
all right. I couldn't find, I didn't come up across anything I specifically liked for the AN launcher, you know, but I figured it's kind of an umbrella thing, so.
Let's think it outside the box.
You know, and then I, you know, added the, and basically I've added just about any way that you could boot off this thing, just so that I'd have it all in there. That's the default way Windows Boot Manager brings up. That goes directly to the Windows, which they both do seem to go to exactly the same place with, you know, with no differences. But I think if you were that this Windows Boot Manager, I'm fairly certain that you can go in there and add other, like I could potentially go in there and say, okay, boot to ArcaOS or boot
It's
to,
absolutely possible. to
Yeah.
do
If
the
you can
same
figure out
thing
how to
with
do it.
the
Yeah.
Boot Manager.
it's just a function of figuring out how to do it, yeah. Which I'm sure it's not that hard, but I had no particular interest
I got
in
it
it.
to like come up and display, and then the one choice was Windows. But
Yeah.
I never figured out how to add anything.
Yeah, it's doable, but I think I have in the past even,
Yeah,
but
they have all these binary files.
Yeah, you gotta do all
configure,
binary
and
stuff,
you
yeah.
have to use a special tool to change them, so, and you can actually easily break.
yeah, you can break
something that
everything,
I
yeah.
did it once when I was installing OS2 next to Windows 11.
Yeah,
So I had to Google up how to restore it manually actually. So I succeeded at that as well, but you would have to do a lot of research and then just to manually edit these files. But it's all possible.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah.
and you can only do it then, and then you
It's
could
much
only
more
change it,
complex than- yeah.
and you could only change it within Windows then.
Yeah.
With this, I can and have changed it with rEFInd within ArcaOS and OpenSUSE. Now, I haven't looked hard on it, but when I was booted into Windows, I didn't find a good way to give a drive letter to the EFI.
Oh.
To
yeah,
be able to
that
get
is a
into
trick.
it.
Yeah, it is.
You can do it, but I mean, I know you can do it, but it's not. I didn't spend any time trying to figure that out, because if it wasn't right, you know, if it'd been right there, simple, okay, fine. Otherwise, I'm not
Like
digging into that.
round vol or some
Yeah.
command line command is
Yeah.
symbols that.
Yeah, it's not. I don't figure it's hard. I just didn't dig into it
Yeah,
at all.
just-
There's also a UEFI shell that you can run from here that will give you a lot of commands to edit NVRAM.
So, and then that's the recovery. You know, Windows recovery is also an option. And then this one here is, in fact, I'm going to boot that one first. That's the one that came up with the. That's if you did not have any launcher, and it was just, and this was the only system on the operating system, was the only one on there. Or it was ArcaOS. It comes up to this, and you have to select which is your boot drive. Now I'm actually going to reboot this and so I can show you another aspect. Oops. All right, so instead of hitting enter to select it, you can hit, there's actually other things you can hit, but F2 is what I always use because I remember it. I think it's actually being cut off around at the bottom. It tells you what it is, but it's being cut off here. It says use arrow keys to move cursor, enter to boot. It actually, there's another line below that, and it says, and I think there's another one, but like I said, I always use F2. You hit F2, it takes you to this. Now, it doesn't look like much, but I can type in D:, and I think it's dropping it off, cutting it off. But if I hit the D:, it passes that on, and it skips that screen where you have to make the selection. So if, you know, for this, I mean, for practical purposes, there's no reason you'd go in there and do this very often, but that gives you that does give you the ability, if you need to pass something to any operating system, you can go in there and do it through that. So if you need to make like a one-time thing, you go in there and select, make that selection, put that, and edit that so it passes those parameters over. Now, other than this, I don't know what you might do with that because I just don't know. Yeah, if you know what to type in there, sure. I'd have to know what to put in there, but you're right. I'm not sure what the commands that you'd be passing it are, but I'm sure that is something you could do.
We got a hang going on here, or what's going on?
Yes, we do. This is what I was talking about a while ago. I'll bet the thing is booted all the way up. However, display is not doing anything, which is strange because like I said, I have had the ArcaOS installed on here previously, and I've redone the whole system since then. And I'm fairly certain with discrete graphics that it was working before, so I don't know why it's now.
Did you switch the output, you think?
No, it was doing this a while ago when I was, and like I said, I'm fairly certain it was working previously because I'd done some test installs on here. But it is possible I never selected discrete graphics, but I usually think I had it on discrete graphics because that was what always seemed to be the one we should have selected. But if I hit Control-Alt-Delete R, Y, and it may actually be hung this time because it's not. Nope, it's rebooting now.
That's a dramatic example.
But in order to get to show on the screen, I had to select the discrete graphics. But I can't get it to show up on the screen.
What's that icon, by the way?
That one's a rowboat.
Oh, those little eyeballs.
Eyeballs.
Rowboat. Okay.
Oh, a rowboat.
Yeah.
I thought you said a robot.
Robot, yeah. Rowboat, yes. At least that's what I think it is. I think it's a rowboat. That's what it looks to me like. Anyway, so I figured, well, if I'm using that, I'm probably, needing to, in trouble. So.
Now, does the other ArcaOS boot up okay?
No, those boot exactly the same. It's just that one of them is using is going directly to it, just like AN Launcher does. And it's passing.
Just the way the other one did?
Yes, it'll hang up just the way the other one is. And I'll bring up here in a little bit. I'll show you the actual files so you can see the difference. There, well, I showed it a while ago, but I'll bring it back so now we can see the actual difference. But that one is pointing to ArcaOS the same way AN Launcher does. This one, like I said, is as if there were no. This one is just like if there were no boot launcher at all. And let's see, just so you can see on this screen, it doesn't look so bad. You can, I mean, it's not great, but I mean, that's really, really small on this screen. It's a 4K monitor. Well, I forgot I had that in auto boot.
Laptop is that?
This is a ThinkPad. It's a P72. It's got a 4K monitor on it, so it makes makes it really tiny. And give it a moment so I can reboot this. It's hard to tell when it's there because I can't see it.
Do you use it at 4K?
Yes. Yes. I can show you what it looks like, in a bit, but all right. So, and from here, I mean, like I said, this is you can do basically the exact same thing as far as booting any of them with the AN Launcher. You lose the things like being able to do the previous boot. You lose being able to read the thing nicely, those types of things. But if all you needed to do is be able to make the selection and you mostly boot off of one thing, you can, there's no great need of going to the rEFInd. The rEFInd though is a lot easier to see. on the newer screens, and gives you some of those other, nice options. But, and, we got no pictures, no icons here. I mean, I don't really need icons, but, it's a quick way of referencing it. I would not like it if all it had was icons. I hate only having icons and having to decipher what that icon means. But if it's got words and icons, they go, give me a quick reference. So, and just like, just because, I just bounce back and forth between them, let's see. There was something I think I might have removed one of them from here. That's not what I meant to do. Got click happy there. It's apparently I didn't need. I put a pause in there to make sure it found the external monitors, but apparently I didn't need that. All right, let's see. I wanted to go here. I thought I had this one on the other screen, but on the rEFInd, but I might have removed it. I don't remember what I've got it currently set to. I think that'll boot to Windows now. I think I'm back to, yeah. I think I put it back to that. So, oh, it is, because it's old 64, not the. So I do actually. I guess I probably do have that one. Maybe just not by that method.
It's the Antichrist.
All right, where's my mouse? Well, to run SolidWorks, which I'm wanting to get into, it's the only option.
That's for SolidWorks.
It's 3D.
Yeah, but that has a Mac version too, doesn't it?
It might. I don't know anything. I avoid Mac more than I avoid Windows.
Battle lines have been drawn.
Right? You won't tell Mac you said that.
Yeah, I finally figured out how to use an iPhone. Is that think about whatever I'm wanting to do, and figure out the worst place it could possibly be put on the phone, and that's where it's at. I just have to think about the silliest place for it to be, and boom, there it
Makes
is.
some sense there, yeah.
You go to fish heaven,
Of course, about that time they figure out that I figured out where stuff is at, and they found an even worse place to put it. So,
Or they change it, it just breaks.
yeah. All right, let's see.
What's that?
Yeah, OpenSUSE, yeah. Yeah.
And it
I would
has
be-
like 5 of its own choices, probably.
So I because I was afraid I wasn't going to be able to, and it turns out it looks like I was right, I wasn't going to be able to do it on the ArcaOS up here. I had to put it on here, which actually I've got it where I can get to it. I've got it on I've got the presentation on a JFS that I can access from either side. So. All right, let's see. I think I can do this. I gotta make that different sized. can use that. All right, so. All right. Well, let's see if I can move that over any. All right, where's my mouse? Well, apparently I'm not going to be able to move that any. All right, actually, let me go back a level. And no, can I make that any? I can't make that any smaller, can I? Okay, there we go. Somebody was looking yesterday at this directory here, saw the boot at this level. That boot is put in there by Windows. That's nobody else that uses that boot at that level. I don't know exactly what that is. I don't know if that's part of their boot manager or exactly what, but that is not part of anybody else's system. If you look at it, it's just got boot.sdi. I don't know exactly how that is used, but I think it's part of, when you do the BCI edit or BC edit, it may store some information in there. That's just a guess, but that's what I think it may be part of. But that is a Windows only thing. So if you're at the first level and you see the boot, and you got Windows, that's from Windows. This boot is the one that the ArcaOS stuff is in. On certain systems, and probably I'm going to guess at this point older systems. I don't figure any of the current systems will have that it'll be an issue on. I mean, I can't guarantee it wouldn't be, but probably not. It won't find, it may not find rEFInd by going in there with the NVRAM variables. This is something that he talks about on his page some, and like I said, I think that's older UEFI systems. When the things were kind of still being, they were shipping them, but they were still being working out that kind of stuff. It talks about renaming the rEFInd directory to boot, and then calling it let's just go in there because so that boot x64, that is the one that David was talking about, that he sets that up as launcher, so it just copies launcher EFI to that one for the fallback. And you could, so rEFInd can be, instead of being in the rEFInd directory, you could put the stuff here in the boot directory, and then do some, and point everything to it that way. That is, an option that then you could, if you're wanting that to be your your fallback, you could then put the boot x64 there. I think, I do have that. Well, I'll show you one other thing here in a bit. I meant to show you while I was doing the other boots. All right, so we've got the rEFInd .sample that's got everything the way that it was originally. In fact, let's take a look at that, because I told you I couldn't remember the timeout, for instance. And all right, so I don't think I changed it in the sample. I could have, but I don't think I changed the sample.
They fully documented what your settings are in the sample here?
Yeah, I mean, it like I was saying, they
It's a really nice booter.
yeah, I mean, it's well, you know, I mean, like I said, this is just a sample. You go to the web page, I mean, there's so much information that is in there. Let's see. Oh, fiddle, I don't remember what I'm trying to find now.
Definitely reach out to them and ask them to add the OS2 icon into the distribution, because there is even like haiku icon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And OS2 one, so yeah. I mean,
Yeah, there's probably a fairly good chance.
zip file with
But we didn't need it before because we
Yeah.
couldn't have UEFI
Right.
boot.
Yeah, this the one thing that's not documented here that I know, because that's what I was trying to remember. So for the legacy is not documented
Yeah.
in the sample here. So that I had to go pull from the web page.
And yet, note that legacy BIOS options require firmware support.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but it didn't have in here the explicit thing of adding legacy. So, and I don't know if that was an oversight or intentional. I really don't know. It just, you know, does. But like I said, you can see how comprehensive the thing is overall. So, so if that's the only thing it's missing, I mean, it's.
Oh, wait, there's another one.
Well, this
BIOS
is this.
spaced, it said BIOS.
Let's see what we got.
I think that's what I used. Keep going up.
Oh,
BIOS, external HD BIOS.
oh yeah.
Yeah.
And I don't know the difference between that and maybe it's been replaced, but
That's how I got to
yeah.
Air Boot with the HD BIOS.
Yeah, and I don't know if maybe this if Legacy maybe have replaced this, or if this has replaced Legacy, or if they do different things. You
Yeah.
know, it's possible that, and it's also possible that that this may be an older version. Although I pulled it from his site, I don't remember which one I've got here. There's two. There are two that they release. One of them is built with GCC stuff, and one's built with I don't even know what the other one's built with. They have some differences in. They should work the same, but I can't remember. Honestly, I don't remember why they had the two different ones. But there's one of them I think was may have been more for having more free, you know, the GPL or something. I don't really remember. It was, you know, but there was two different releases, and it's possible that could be something from the version that I grabbed is maybe older or newer or whatever.
So Neil, you got it. You got rEFInd to boot into the Air Boot.
Yes.
Yeah, that's where here you would add HD BIOS according to this.
Yeah.
Legacy is what I come across in the on the web page.
Okay.
That was with a Lenovo M920 tower, and so the BIOS was obviously doing a lot of the work here. You know, if there's no BIOS legacy code in the BIOS, then that would do nothing. But
And then-
because that version of Lenovo BIOS did boot Air Boot, well, great.
And then there's this deep scan, which I guess searches even harder for them. So if it's not finding them, I guess this looks like it may scan, you know, even deeper for it. Like I said, this thing's, I mean, you can see how much stuff this thing. Now, the majority of this file is comments on how to use it.
Yeah.
The actual number of options is not as great as the size of the file
Yeah.
appears.
It's still pretty great.
I mean, it's great. I'm just saying, I mean, but you see how many lines it has, and it looks like there's just this huge, and it's really, and you cut it down, let's see.
I don't know if you're an expert on Grub, but it sure has a lot on how to control Grub.
All right, so this is the first, when I first started working on it. So I'm pretty certain that the timeout was probably there. Use NVRAM faults, that's where I'm telling it to write the stuff to the disk rather than to NVRAM. It says that the default is true, so I must have changed that one. Let's see. I actually cut a bunch of stuff out. I left things in there like, maybe I didn't cut it out like I thought I had on this one. Okay, there's, so, all right, so initially I had it set to, where it's using Endeavor Linux, and the volume name there was Endeavor Linux. It had the name. Now that was another thing that bit me during that whole process, because when I was switching it over, is that I didn't remember to set a volume name, so then I had to go figure out what the partition UUID was. And I was originally in ArcaOS, and I thought I was looking at a partition UUID, and I was not. And so it took me a while to figure that out. Because instead of using a volume name, I had to put the UUID in there, so I had to go find that, which is easy to do in Linux, but I thought I was finding it and was not, and so I was trying to, for a while, figure out why I was having the problems I was having when I switched it over.
It's just a text string that is displayed in the selection menu, basically.
Yeah, I can show you. So the first line is just.
What is the difference between the first line and the volume?
All right, so this here, you can actually label the volume or the partition. Mm-hmm. You can give it a name. Mm-hmm. But as you go through and set, but that's done, as far as I can tell, you have one shot at that. I couldn't find any way to go back. Now, there's probably a way to doing it. I didn't look real hard. So, because it was like, why waste my time on it? Other than it would probably have taken me less time to do that than it did eventually take me to figure out the UUID thing.
Yeah.
But I was like, I'm just wanting to get this thing going, rather than figuring out how to set a label that I don't care about. But so the menu entries is just what shows up on the rEFInd screen. And notice that that's actually the only one that's got a volume. The rest of them, that's because it's passing that volume to the EFI.
This is what is necessary.
And so it needs that. These others, Windows and ArcaOS, don't need that, at least to here. Now, what I could do is I could add actually no, I did do it. So I did do an options here, where I'm passing did at one time, pass the D colon, so it would go, oh no, that one does. So this one here I did as an option rather than the volume. I don't know if I might have been able to pass it as volume. I don't know. I don't know if that name for options, because we call it options and Linux is calling it volume. I'm not sure. I pulled options directly from from ours and shoved it in there. So that may be what the EFI is expecting. The other one's expecting volume. Ours is expecting options. Until just now, I didn't really notice the difference, and so I didn't actually think to test that. So
they are just like arguments to
yeah,
bootloader or
yeah, it's an argument to the EFI.
Yeah.
It's an argument to the EFI, and so ours I think may be expecting options, and so I don't know. I was just assuming it was sending D colon, but I don't know, maybe it's got that option in there. But, or maybe I need to change it. And actually, let me get out of this one. It was also possible I realized that wasn't working. And I cut even more stuff out of this one, so it's got, you know, so now I could have, you know, cut a lot of the stuff out because I didn't need it in this one. So it's much shorter there. That was what I was planning to put it, set the volume as, but I missed doing it, and so I ended up having to change the change that. So. Yeah, so so this one's options, that one's volume, and I think, I don't know if I haven't tested it. I guess I could change it right quick and go see what happens. But there's,
You wanna know what the documentation says about these two?
yes,
Okay, so volume, possible parameters, file system label, partition label, or GUID value.
yeah,
Sets the volume that's used for subsequent file accesses by icon and loader, and by implication by init.rd if loader allows volume. You pass this token of file system's label, a partition's label, or a partition's GUID. A file system or partition label is typically displayed under the volumes icon in file managers, and rEFInd displays it on its menu at the start of the identifying string for an auto-detected bootloader. If this label isn't unique, the first volume of the specified label is used. The matching is nominally case insensitive, or in some EFIs, it's case sensitive. If a volume has no label, you can use a partition GUID number. If this option is not set, the volume defaults to the one from which rEFInd launched. That's what it says about volume. Now, options, yes, that's as confusing to me as it was to you. Options pass to the bootloader. Pass arbitrary options to your bootloader with this line. Note that if the option string should contain spaces, as it often should, or characters that should not be modified by rEFInd's option parser, such as slashes or commas, it must be enclosed in quotes. You must include quotes in an option. You can double them up, as in my opt equals quote, quote, with quotes,
around
which
it.
passes my op equals quote, with quotes, unquote, as an option. Boy, that reads a lot easier than it.
Could you read that again?
So options is specifically for the bootloader,
Right.
and volume is for rEFInd, so that it can find a particular volume by its name.
Or GUID, right?
Or GUID, yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
That's why you need that big number.
Yeah, exactly. Actually, that GUID is for a partition type, not to identify a given volume.
So-
How are volumes identified there? Is it unique? What does that mean, a volume?
a volume's like a partition.
A partition.
Okay. Oh, like
Yeah.
in, when we set up.
Yeah.
Right. The thing to remember, the difference between a volume and a partition is that a volume is a logical construct.
Right.
So one partition, in an MBR file system, for instance, one partition may have multiple logical volumes
Right.
on it. Each one gets a drive letter. That's what makes the whole thing confusing. Partitions and volumes both get drive letters. And a partition may contain one or more volumes.
But so like this when I called the ArcaOS test, it's exactly the same as the one above, except I didn't feed it the option. So without the option, it comes up and asks, oh, well, what drive do you want to use? And I changed the icon just so that I could visually see the difference in the icon. That's the only difference. Oh, I should say in the menu entry name, but the actual thing is the actual loader is the same. It's just that what I'm passing and what I'm calling it. So, but this is, and this was the one that for the Windows recovery that was up in there. It's just and a lot of that stuff I found. Either rEFInd showed it to me when it found it, so I added it, or it was in the when you do an F12 boot, it was showing up in there. That's how I added it.
Now, if you chose Windows recovery,
Yeah.
is that going to like destroy everything and put it back to the way it was when you bought the computer?
Not unless you select the options in the Windows recovery environment to do that. You can boot into the recovery environment without doing anything destructive.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
And you can tell it to repair the Windows, the Windows that's there.
Try to repair.
Well,
the Windows
you can tell it to all you
can tell
want.
it. You can tell it until the cows come home.
So,
Talking about DLL help, I got stuck in that loop with a client's machine one time. I said, and I've never worked on Windows 10. He says, but you're a computer guy, right? I mean, it was days I was trying to recover his partition frame.
Sure.
And then I finally had to resort to the Microsoft option, reinstall the operating system.
Okay.
so anyway, so the this one I specifically pulled from the from the NVRAM, how to get to that one. Like I said, it does exactly the same as this one in practice. In what it's doing, I don't know, but the point of fact is getting to the same place without my seeing anything different. But I'm fairly certain the one is, like I said, you could change it so that's not the case. The second one there is where we renamed the default, so that, or I should say the fallback. So I went ahead and added that one just because. It's like I said, it's got you can add or remove any of these that you want, just what you want to be able to get to. I've got 3 entries to be able to where I could theoretically get to ArcaOS. I could I don't need the obviously I don't need the AN launcher in there, but I mean it doesn't. And then, like I said, I added the other way for I get to rEFInd from the ArcaOS launcher. In fact, when I was initially set it up, that's what I was booting to until the OpenSUSE decided to change everything for me. That's what I was doing. It'd come up to the ArcaOS launcher, and I'd go into rEFInd. That way, I knew I could until I had everything set up. I knew that I could get into where I wanted to be.
If I could break it, it's now noon, so if anybody needed to check out today before noon, this is the good time to go.
Yeah, this is.
We've got 2 minutes. I already ran up there and checked it out. So.
Okay.
Yeah, I think me and you are the only ones that are checking out today.
And we have this room for the entire day, so if you check out, you've got stuff with you, you can bring it here to the room and stay safe.
Yeah, I stuck mine in my truck, so. All right, let's see. There was something else, I think. Oh, yeah, it says, and there was one other thing I was going to show you. So.
By the way, can you boot off a USB stick from this?
Yes, I've got one over there somewhere that's bootable, or if somebody's got a bootable one, I can shove it in there.
But does that mean there's like a generic entry for USB booting and you?
No, I'll show it to you though.
What's on the stick?
There's a scan for external USB bootable, so you can just add that and it will scan for whatever you got plugged in.
Wow.
This volume thing is just telling it to look for this specific EFI on this specific volume.
Yes.
It's all it does actually. So this is how, just
That's what it
check
appears to
the
be.
documentation as well. So if there is no volume, it will look on the EFI partition. If you want to take the EFI from some other volume, and if there is a driver to support the file system on this volume, then rEFInd can just access
Right.
it and load this EFI from that specific volume.
That's the way it reads to me.
Yeah,
Yeah, I forgot about the drivers. Oh, jeez.
Yeah.
That-
It should be readable, of course, by rEFInd.
All right, that is another advantage of rEFInd over the ArcaOS launcher. If if you don't have it, depending on your order of boot, which I always have it set up, where I'd have to hit F12 to boot off of a USB stick. This just sees it right there.
So it sees it.
No, that's not it. Wait a minute. That's
Fallback boot loader.
no, that's not it. Wait a minute.
rEFInd boot.
It's not seeing it.
What? It says it has a boot fallback.
Yeah, but that should have been showing it as
An external.
an
as a
external.
USB.
But that is new because it wasn't there.
So we're trying to boot from it, what's it do?
If you dare.
I want to see the difference.
Try something first before trying to understand what it does.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, much more fun.
Hey, absolutely.
Didn't install any SolarWinds.
Yeah, it had to be that
It takes
because
a lot of time.
it's gone.
Yeah.
It's just a strange. I
Just
The worst
misidentified.
part, it's like WinPE with the, with the disk part. Clean. Yeah, select disk 0 clean.
Yeah. See how it works.
Yeah.
The other thing it's got some other things. It's got an about screen, so it can tell you which version you're using. I don't know what this manage hidden tags menu is. If I hit it though, it says I don't have any.
Yeah.
So
Because they're hidden.
yeah, yeah. You can shut down the computer from there, reboot the computer, and
Go into BIOS.
that goes into BIOS.
Setup. But I think that's kind of neat because instead of having to remember what function
Yeah.
key gets to the BIOS screen, it's like okay, select it. It's slower because you have to it reboots first.
Where do they move the think button?
Yeah. Well, I've always just used F10. It just still works. It always has worked. Well, that's it. So I don't remember looking. I don't remember having those particular. Well, it's called it there, but. But yeah, it'll add it to it, and you can just select it. Makes it a lot easier for if you're needing to boot off of a USB drive. Let's see. Which one? Oh, I don't have it here. That's what it is. I should have added it here, and I didn't. All right, Control Delete. I came upon this late, and so I didn't think about adding it there. So bootx64 is going, boots off. I've got that set where it boots off the default, the deep fallback, which I set to be rEFInd under boot, but it's just the renamed rEFInd, none of the other files. It still will come up and give me the ability to boot, but it doesn't give me any of the. It doesn't work off of the conf file. Then there's no conf file. So even without a conf file, it will still. Now it's a little harder to figure out what things are if you don't know what they're exactly.
We'll just scan the partitions, try
Yeah.
to find files as far as
Yeah. Well, I think it's just pulling from NVRAM directly is all it's doing. Because like this one here, I don't think I must never have removed that from the NVRAM, because that one no longer exists at all. No, that's not true. It did find it. It pulled it from the. It didn't find it. No, I don't think that one is in the NVRAM. That must be pulling it from the EFI directly. Yeah. Because I did.
Say that they scan.
Yeah, because I didn't remove the Endeavor. I thought I had, but no, I have not removed the Endeavor OS under EFI. So it just went and found those and sticks them up there where you can still boot to something anyway. So, which can be, you know, advantageous to have that access. You know, if everything fails, which if everything fails, I'm thinking you may have problems enough it doesn't really matter anyhow. But you know, there could be circumstances that it would be still capable of getting in anyhow. Are there anything online or?
Check. Alex just saying other way around, a volume may contain one or more partitions. It was about the volume discussion. And Sandra said expanded volumes are only supported with MBR unless I miss something. And more than 2 terabytes per ArcaOS Type 1 GPT partition or native drive isn't supported anyway. At least I don't think so.
No, it's not. I've actually tested that. I took a 2 terabyte and another. I don't think it's full. I don't think it is a full 2 terabytes, but two. I took over. I created a 2 terabyte partition and then spanned it onto another.
Oh,
Yeah. It tried. But it did some really bizarre things. I think there must be something that is set where the number actually does loop or something, because it went into some weird. It really got weird.
Yeah. The 2 terabyte boundary is a logical partition size boundary.
Yeah.
So you can. Did you try spanning something smaller than 2 terabytes?
I have in the past, but not at that time.
With GPT?
No, I don't remember if those were even GPT volumes. They may have been, may not have been. I can't recall now. I was just thinking that maybe this is a way I could say, hey, the spanning thing might be able to take 2 GPTs at 2 terabytes each
And make
it a
make
4.
4 terabyte. Yeah,
So
make 4
I tested it because I thought, well, maybe it would present it in such a way that it would accept that, but no.
I don't think that the filter allows for the spanning
Yeah.
to work.
It might not. I don't. Like I said, I don't know even if they were probably not even GPT. I figured if it was going to work, it would work under MBR.
Yeah.
And yeah, it did some really bizarre stuff. I can't remember. I can't remember exactly what happened, but it was like it either made it. I think it reduced the size by some amount. So I had like almost 2 terabyte
overhead to the spanning process.
Yeah, so it was like it went from like 2 terabytes to, and maybe not quite 2 terabytes to start with, to something a little bit less or something. And
Okay, so that actually, I wasn't thinking this direction, but what are the ramifications potentially then with hardware RAID? Like disk mirroring or striping with parity? Is this going to see that as just one volume?
If it's done in hardware, it will appear as one volume.
Okay, so should be no operational implications then?
No, it's a matter of size.
Okay.
So the 2 terabyte limit
Mhm.
is an absolute limit for JFS partition size,
Okay,
logical or physical.
okay. Well, but that's the same as HPFS was, isn't it?
No, HPFS, you can't go to 2 terabytes.
Well, you can.
No.
64 gigs.
64 gigs. That's the
Okay,
limit on
right,
HPFS.
right. Okay,
So,
so,
in other words, the point is that we know that the filter for our GPT filter allows you to take, say, a 12 terabyte disk
mhm,
and carve it up into 6 2 terabyte pieces.
right,
You cannot span
2 of those.
2 or more of those things to
Right.
create a larger than 2 terabyte JFS volume, period.
Okay,
If they are less than 2 terabytes, let's say you take that and divide it into 12 1 terabyte
yes.
partitions,
Mhm.
the spanning under GPT will not work. even if they are type 35 partitions.
Okay.
You cannot span them because they are GPT. The GPT filter does not provide for the spanning functionality that's available in the file system.
Okay.
That's
You'll
just,
never need more than 2 terabytes.
who needs more than 640K?
Yeah. So, any questions that we've got, either in the room or online?
Installing rEFInd.
Yes. Okay, installing rEFInd. I meant to touch on that, and yes, I had missed that. So, installing rEFInd is surprisingly simple compared to what I was expecting, and it's actually even simpler than what, in a sense, than what what he says it is on the web page, because he says, well, you can't just copy the files over. Well, yes, you
Under
can.
ArcaOS you can.
And even under Linux, you can. Now, yes, there's beyond that, you do have to make sure then how it's working, how to get there. But yeah, I mean, was as simple as copying the files into, you have to make sure where you're copying them to. So, so we went into the rEFInd directory. I just created a rEFInd directory under EFI, copied all the files in there, and then edit your conf file if you want to. I mean, you don't have to, but I shouldn't say you would have to copy. You copy
You have to rename the sample file to the live conf.
Yeah, and then edit it, or you could write it from scratch, whatever. But you create a conf file or not. If you don't create a conf file, it just go look for everything and shows it to you. Now, like I said, what you lose then is you lose being able to name it, so you can say, hey, this is OpenSUSE, this is ArcaOS. You can't put pictures, your own pictures. It will put pictures up. It's just, and if I think it might have recognized Windows and might have put a Windows one with it, and Endeavor put something up there, but not the one I switched it to, I think, or maybe it didn't put the Endeavor one up. I can't recall. It'll still put pictures up, just you don't get to decide what they are, which is not necessarily a problem. So depending on your use, you don't necessarily you can just let it go find the stuff, if you want to. I went in and put everything in there so that I could say, okay, I want to be able to see this, and I want to have this name on it and have everything like I wanted it.
So how did you set the BIOS variable to
so
rEFInd?
So this, I initially, like I said, what I did was, because I had the AN launcher in there, I just added rEFInd to launcher, and I added launcher to rEFInd, so I could jump back and forth and do all this. But in order to do it where it was, booted to that just automatically, I went in. I used the Linux EFI boot MGR, and with that I was able to add it as a boot option. Actually, that automatically set it as the first option, because apparently when you add an entry with EFI Boot Manager, now there may be a parameter to not do it, but by default it now puts it as your default option. So you can add something in there that you want to have added in there, but it automatically makes it the default. So then you have to go back in, and there's another EFI Boot Manager option that sets the order. So so that I just wouldn't screw things up, I went and copied the existing boot option order, put the commands in, pasted, and then went and edited the line so that it had the order that I wanted it in, and didn't have to type all the rest of it in and screw something up. But that's all it took. Now, you can also simplify your life. From what I did, is that if you're running it on Linux and maybe Windows, I can't guarantee that one. I didn't look. There is an installer for rEFInd available at least on most packages to install rEFInd, and I think it will automatically set your NVRAM for you. So but I was trying to do it from, as much as possible, I was doing it from the ArcaOS, until I got to the point where OpenSUSE blew out my NVRAM anyhow. And then to recover at all from that, I had to re-add the ArcaOS launcher and everything else while I was in there.
Yeah,
Just
Willis
added that.
is good at that.
I
So-
believe that the rEFInd package comes with an EFI binary utility that you can run from the EFI shell
Yeah, I've got that on this laptop.
to set that. So if you can get into the EFI shell, and you would be able to do that if you added rEFInd to the launcher menu, boot to launcher, switch to rEFInd, jump to the shell, then you should be able to run that command line from the EFI shell to that.
Yeah, you can do that.
So-
You could spend all day doing this stuff.
Oh,
You
I
really
spent
could.
more
It's
than a
whole
day.
other- people say, well, when are we gonna get a 64-bit OS2? Well, our EFI environment is 64 bits.
Yeah.
So you got it.
So-
There's your 64 bits.
But yeah, when the OpenSUSE blew everything out, it took me 2 days to figure out exactly what all had happened and be able to recover from it.
It doesn't leave a note behind.
That's,
Yeah.
by the way, that's 2 days of your life you'll never get back.
Yeah, and it was time I was planning on doing other testing.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, don't those Linux guys, aren't they aware that they destroy stuff? I mean,
They don't
They
care.
don't give a shit?
They just don't care. It's like if you ask the guys at Microsoft, don't you care when you're installing a boot manager or something, that you're blowing away every other boot manager on the system?
No.
Not our concern.
Mm.
Our philosophy was different. Our philosophy was, first, do no harm. We don't want to disrupt anything that's on the disk.
Right.
We just want to get our stuff in there. Now, does that mean that because of the presence of that other stuff, our stuff won't boot? Well, that's possible. But we're not going to blow away anything that's already on the disk.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
But yeah, I mean that's Linux is an interesting ecosystem in that regard. They don't mind, like I said, blow it out. That's fine to them. They don't. They seem to not only not care about backwards compatibility. They seem to be actively trying to remove backwards compatibility at every opportunity. It's.
I mean, they do
Yep.
integrate it into their own boot thing, like it'll find Windows,
Yeah.
but it doesn't find OS2.
Generally not.
Oh, in this case, it also didn't. It didn't find Windows. It didn't find rEFInd. It didn't find Arca. It was.
Really, Grum 2 didn't?
It
didn't identify?
booted straight to OpenSUSE. I mean, boom, that was it. Nothing.
That's probably not Grub doing that, it's the thing that installs Grub.
Well, it was the EFI. They set their
Yeah.
EFI
Yeah.
where it booted, and I don't know. I honestly am not. Don't recall if that boot is using Grub.
I mean, I use Ubuntu always, and it doesn't actually destroy anything, and everything's still accessible, it's just you have to do it a different way than.
This one's using, I think, System D boot is what I think it's using. It could just be using EFI stub. I'm not actually certain which one it is, but I don't think, from what it looks like to me, I don't know that it's using Grub. At least I've never gotten into a Grub window. It could just be that Grub's passing it on so fast that I don't see it. But I'm not, and I haven't looked that closely at it. The only reason I know some of those things that had been working on trying to get Gentoo booted up on what had been an OpenSUSE system, and I was trying not to reformat anything. Well, reformat wasn't my problem. I didn't want to repartition because I wanted to leave the I didn't want to format. I wanted to leave the home directory alone originally, and trying to get the thing to boot with a encrypted drive with getting all that set up because you're having to build everything from scratch with Gen 2. So that turned out to be interesting.
So is your drive got separate partitions or a single partition with separate volumes on it?
Mine's it's GPT, so it's got separate primary partitions.
Okay.
I've got 2 4 terabyte NVMEs in it.
Oh, all right.
So it's I've got 3 OSs installed, so each of those have their own boot, their own boot sections.
Mm-hmm.
And Windows and Linux are set where basically it's one volume or one partition for that boot. Then I've got a separate NTFS partition that Windows and Linux can share. I had planned to have that as be able to share that using the NTFS net drive. Turns out that net drive is not presented apparently what it needs through the GPT for the NTFS.
Oh, that's interesting.
It's not showing. It does not show
because
my.
you have to identify the NTFS device by an MBR device number.
And it doesn't show it. It shows the other. I mean, you're going to DFC.
Interesting.
You,
The filter doesn't supply that adequately.
yeah, I mean, I haven't had a chance to say anything about that, but yeah, I cannot share the NTFS currently. And then I have a separate JFS. Well, I have a separate JFS for my OS2 for all the OS2 stuff. Then I have another JFS partition that's shared between Linux and the ArcaOS there. And I had built, because before I remembered that it couldn't be used, I built a partition for be able to do dumps, and then I remember, oh yeah, I can't do that with GPT nor with NVMe, so I got 2 whammies on that one. Forgot about that when I first created it, but it's got that volume, I got it available now, so.
So make a backup of your ESP there so that you can don't confuse yourself as to which one is the real one.
Oh, that was the other thing that OpenSUSE had done added to the time and confusion was it also decided to create a second ESP for me.
Perfect.
The first time around.
Perfect. What could go wrong?
Yeah. Actually, no, I think it was the second time. First time something else was blown up. Second time, I thought it was saying just mount the existing one. No, apparently it was creating one and mounting it then. So, despite the fact that the other one had the thing that specifically said mount, thing. So it's like that was really helpful. And it took me around and around and around trying to. I said, well, I've renamed this thing. It should be booting off of this. Why is that not working? That's because it's using the other ESP. And because it would update the NVRAM. When I booted back up, it broke again. I said, I just booted into rEFInd. Why is it not working? Because it has a setting by default. It will not only. So in the boot process, there's a thing that asks you, do you want it to update the NVRAM? Okay, well, yes, I kind of do, at least first time around. Mm-hmm. But it puts that setting into a conf file, so that it does it every time it boots. I'm like, why would I want it to do it every time it boots? I can't imagine that. But that took me a while to catch on to how to fix that. That's why all the stuff combined is why it took me 2 days to recover from that. Anything else? If not, I'm thinking it's lunchtime.
Yeah, I think you've covered it.
All right.
Yeah, it has a lunch option.
Yeah.